Welcome to the OCIA Book Club. I'm Rosie Hernandez, Director of Formation and Evangelization. I'm reading and breaking down each part of the newly translated Order of Christian Initiation of Adults, reviewing the content and important elements. So we're going to start today with numbers 36 to 47, which talk about the period of evangelization and PreCatechumenate. Previously, we used to call this inquiry, and you'll see why as we go through, but we're going to look at this right now primarily as evangelization or PreCatechumenate. Before we get to that, I do want to make sure you know that in the page preceding this, there is a full outline of part one of the whole process as it's written. And so it shows the four stages along with the rites that go in between. So make sure you're familiar with that and you know where that is. But let's leap right into chapter 1, starting with number 36. Number 36, first of all, says that the period of evangelization pre-catechumenate should normally not be omitted. Now, remember that when it says normally, that means there may be a reason why you could omit it or cut it short because, for example, you may have people coming in that are fully catechized. They've just never been baptized, and that is possible. They've been attending Mass for 20 years with their spouse, but they themselves never had their sacraments. Well, they're not starting the same location or the same spiritual journey as your other catechumens who maybe have no knowledge of the faith at all. So just remember that normally means, for the most part, everybody should go through some period of pre-catechumenate, but you might have some extenuating circumstances where someone might be able to skip this part and go right into the rite of entrance. But remember that that's the exception to the rule. Because this is where evangelization takes place. This is where the Holy Spirit opens their hearts so that they can hear more about the faith and begin to incorporate into their lives. Number 37 fully explains a little more. From evangelization comes that faith and that conversion, the initial conversion that's needed. And so it's really a vital stage. During this stage, number 38 tells us that what we need to do is give a suitable explanation of the Gospels. That's really all we're needed to do. I know in a lot of cases, because especially if you're in a school year model, you're looking at, I only have this many weeks and I need it for catechesis, so I'm going to start right away. But in actuality, that's not what is called for in this order. This order calls for us to start with connecting with evangelization and with an explanation of the gospel. And in actuality, that's all. That's all that's asked for in this period as we read through the order. The rest of it, as it talks about initial way of receiving the well disposed, which is something we don't really talk about because it may not come into play. That's many times you're in a culture where people are just completely unfamiliar with who Christ is at all, and they're there for reasons that have nothing to do with their faith. And so they're not quite sure if this is where their faith belongs. And so they're not quite inquirers at the same level as your other unbaptized. They're more inquirers at a level where they're coming to find out what exactly is going on here. So that whole 39 is just talking about how to receive them, that we need to adapt it to the region that we live in. If you're living in, a rural country or an area that's very rural and has no connection, very few churches, no knowledge of Jesus, then you're really going to work at it in a different method. Now, some of that may apply, maybe not culturally or maybe culturally, but maybe for other reasons that are very specific to your area. But otherwise, the well disposed is more for people that are coming in to just figure out who Jesus is, figure out who Jesus is, and it's not something that they were brought up with or is part of their a life experience at all. So they're kind of really starting from scratch. So from there, we move into number 41, where we talk about the actual rite of entrance. And here we get a little bit more explanation of what happens during this period. So the rite of entrance into the catechumenate, which used to be the rite of acceptance, the rite of entrance, number 41 reminds us that this is the first time that they're going to be recognized in public in this formal way. And it's the first time that they're literally saying for themselves, yes, this is what I want. And so that's important to really walk through and talk with them about ahead of time so that they understand what this means, but also that the community understands what this means so that when the community is asked, are you going to support these um, now catechumens with your prayer? Everybody just doesn't go, yes, Father, out of habit, but instead truly understands what they're committing to. 42 is an important paragraph that I really encourage you to read over and over and discern with your team. Paragraph 42 is what gives us the signs that we should be looking for as we discern who is ready to move into the catechumenate. It can't be automatic with time. Okay, you've done 6 weeks of pre-catechumenate. Everybody's going to go through because we don't know what their journey is. We don't know if they're ready. And so really taking the time to look for what is explained in 42, to look for that initial conversion, to look for the fact that they're beginning to turn to God in prayer, to look to the fact that they're exploring the Gospels. That's really important. So make sure you look that because 43 reminds us that we need to set aside time for discernment, that before we reach this rite of entrance, we should have met with each one individually to really look at where they are and not just our assessment of them, but their assessment of themselves. How do they feel? Where do they feel they fit in this process? And so make sure that they are ready. We have time then for their to investigate their spiritual disposition, not how many classes they attended or if they can pass this preliminary test or if they know their prayers. That's not at all what we're looking for. We're looking for, have they had the first initial conversion, and are they already showing signs of the first faith? Number 44 reminds us that we receive people in this rite of entrance at fixed times of the year, fixed days, plural. So there is no set day for this rite. It can happen anytime you have a group of inquirers who are ready to move into the catechumenate. Some years it may be after 4 weeks, some years you may need 8 weeks. Some years you may have the majority of the group ready, but 2 or 3 still saying, wait, I'm not quite ready for this step. Then you wait and celebrate when they are ready. This is not just about a calendar date. This is about readiness. This is about when they want to and are prepared to move forward. So it can be done several times a year, especially if we're able to have a year-round catechumenate, which we'll talk about in an upcoming episode. Then you're really able to facilitate them coming into the catechumenate when they are ready. Number 45 reminds us that in this rite, you need to have the presence of the community, whether it be at a Sunday Mass or if it's not able to be a Sunday Mass, especially if this is for children, then you may want to have it at a weekday Mass or during the week, but you still need to have representation of the community present with you because the community has to be there to receive them, welcome them, as well as and say, I'm going to support them with my prayer. And so the community needs to be represented. 46 talks about putting their names in the Book of Catechumens. That is something that has come out in the national statutes with this new translation. And we are, in this diocese of Fresno, we are working on that. As of right now, most parishes do not have a Book of Catechumens, so that will be fodder for an upcoming webinar as soon as we get that settled and get that through the bishop what he wants, and then we will move forward with that. So for right now, paragraph 46 does not apply at this moment. But 47 is just the final paragraph that reminds us that from the moment of this rite, they are catechumens. They belong to the church. And with that is going to come rights and responsibilities in the catechumenate, and that we'll talk about during the catechumenate part of this book. But it's important to know that. They can be buried in a Catholic cemetery if they pass as catechumens, and they have a series of other rights, but they also have responsibilities. And so being named catechumens right at the end of this period and during this rite is going to be vital. Come back for episode 4 when we'll go step by step through the rite to talk about how the rite is done and what each part means.